Hello. Yes, we're back to continue with the group study of the book of Genesis. Today, I want to jump right into it because I have a lot of material to cover and I don't have your attention for more than approximately 15 to 20 minutes. So, the first thing I want to say is I want to talk about the structure of Genesis. Genesis is deliberately structured in a way that presents the material and the story, the narrative, um, in in a deliberate way, in a deliberate fashion. Now, the thing about the structure of Genesis is one. Let me show you this here. You see this document right here? That's the thematic outline, which deals with the major themes and persons of the first book of the Bible. Uh, they are, as such, primeval history, creation, fall, flood, Babel, that's chapters 1 through 11. And then chapters 12 through 50 are the patriarchal history. And that's Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Another way of there's three different ways of structuring Genesis for you. Now you're going to find in your commentary that they'll have their own outline, and perhaps in the introduction they'll have a discussion of what the structure of Genesis is. It serves you well to look at that. Now the other way, a couple other ways, is the markers in the narrative where it says this is the account of, or these are the generations of. And when the book of Genesis was originally written, the stories were included under this heading of these are the generations, or this is the account of. And it was on tablets, so each tablet had that heading, and then that part of the narrative was under the heading. And so in the book of Genesis, there are 10 places, I think about 10 if I'm not mistaken, of this thing. And the way you can discover this is by, depending on your English translation, it's the Hebrew word toledot. And toledot is the Hebrew word for this is the generation of, or this is the account of. And let's see, let me count six, but 10 or 11, 10 or 11 markers of that nature. So when you discover that in Genesis, that's another way of. But the way that most commentaries and most literary people structure Genesis is the literary approach, which is right here. And let me just read that to you. A, the creation. B, Eden. C, the fall. D, Cain, Babel, and early generations. E, the flood. F, the table of the nations in Babel. 6, Abram. H, oh, I'm sorry. H, Sodom and Gomorrah. I, Abraham. J, Jacob. Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. It's similar to the other structure I gave to you. Now these are my notes from when I taught the. I presented the lessons before in written form, and I thought the video might be a little more personal, so that's why I decided to do it this way. So anyway, there's a lot of material in my notes. I don't want to, go into it right now because it would take up too much time, and there's so much I want to cover today. Now, today we're going to try to do Genesis 1, verses 1 through 5. And we've already mentioned the structure. Now, another thing about the book of Genesis is many commentaries, like the one I'm using, the Westerman commentary, which I really like a lot, even though I don't always agree with what his conclusions are, is he mentions the Enuma Elish, which is a Babylonian creation account. And they compare it to that because in the ancient Near East, there were certain formulas for telling stories and so forth, and they would use similar elements. And the question is, did the book of Genesis influence them, or did they influence the book of Genesis? Because, like I said before, the Hebrews were the only monotheistic religion, the Hebrew people in that part of the world, in the ancient Near East. All the other nations were polytheistic. And so their creation accounts involved, certain personages, a person like a big, god or force or whatever, and they would clash and there'd be drama and everything. Well, the book of Genesis and the story of the origin of the universe in Genesis is much more logical, much more reasonable, much more efficient, I would say. And I believe that it probably influenced them rather than them influencing it. So anyway, the first day. Okay, what can we say about the first day? Well, in the days of creation, there's a sequence of verbs, and if you follow the verbs in each sentence, like for example, in the first day, it says God saw. No, let's see. God said, God saw, God. God, I forgot now. Oh, I don't have it written down here. Anyway, you check out those verbs. God said, God saw, God called, and God something. I forgot, but I can open the Bible right here. I might as well do that now. Because, so that's important. God called and, God separated. That was it. God separated the light from the darkness. That separation principle will continue throughout the Bible. God separates his people from the other nations. God separates the evil from the good. God separates the different foods, the kosher laws, and in the law of Moses. It's all about God dividing so that he can conquer, you might say. And if you follow that principle of separation throughout the Bible, you'll find that, especially the Old Testament. Okay, so verse 2. Let's say something about verse 2, because you're going to run up against this if you're talking about Genesis to somebody. The gap theory, verse 2. It's called the gap theory because it's just a theory that there was a chaotic universe before God started the 6 days of creation. The matter was already formed, but it was in a state of flux. It wasn't organized. It didn't have order. It's based on the chaos principle, and the idea of chaos before order, or chaos or order created out of chaos. Well, I believe a different way about that. The gap theory, to me, is a way of explaining that the earth was older and that the 6 days came later, that there was a prior creation to the actual creation of the creation week. That's why they call it a gap theory. Well, it's the primordial earth, and it's, based on the Hebrew phrase in verse 2 that says the earth was without form and void. In Hebrew, that's a little bit of a rhyming scheme that says it goes, when it's pronounced, tohu wabohu. and because it rhymes, it had a way of being spoken when the text was read or the story was told. Sometimes a lot of this was passed on orally before it was written down. So anyway, it's a language. It has it resonates with people, and the Book of Genesis is like a prose poem of especially chapter 1, the creation account. It's very structured. You'll find these different phrases reoccurring, like in the evening, in the morning, and God said, and it was good, and all that. If you find it in verse after he creates man, he says it was very good. So I said that once before, I think, in this. Okay, so these are all God's commands. God commanded all this into existence. He had the authority, he had the power, he's the Almighty. So he created everything based on his verbal command, his command. Now, whether you believe in creation out of nothing or the creation out of the chaos in verse 2, that's your choice. You can believe whatever you want about it because it's not written in stone for us. It's just basically God encouraging us to acknowledge him as our creator and as the creator of the universe. Okay, so there's time and space. Like that's another way that God separated. But time began when God created. That's basically the point of that. And there's a pattern, and you'll see this pattern. It's like an action in history. And let's see here. The Sabbath is another principle in the seventh day he rested, and that established the Sabbath principle for all of us. Now, God didn't rest because he was running out of energy and he couldn't take it anymore and he had to lie down. It has nothing to do with that. The Sabbath was a principle that was involved in giving the land rest, giving man rest. It was all for us. God created all the universe and the earth for us. We are the pinnacle of his creation. And all of that he created was so that Adam and Eve could have the fellowship with him. He could have a relationship with his created creatures and love them. And it was all based on free will. That we weren't created to be robots. We were created to have fellowship out of a free will love of God. And so it's important to know that and understand that. Okay, chaos versus order, I already mentioned that. And the one word that you're going to really key off on is the word day. Because in every discussion of Genesis, someone has an opinion or a view or an idea or a doctrine of what day is. Is day a long period of time or is it a short period of time? And the Hebrew word for day is yom. It's the Y-I sounding letter and om. So yom. And the word created is only used in the Bible with the reference to God. The other verbs that are used for when man creates are different. So these verbs are important to be aware of, and I already made mention of those. Now I just finished that, so now let's try to break down this first day of creation. What did God create on the first day? Why was light the first thing he created? Does anybody have an answer for that? Well, I might, but it's a little long. I have 3-page document here that discusses that very thing, that very question. Why was God? What is light? Why did God create light on the first day? What does that mean? It's all right here, and if you'd like it, I can post it. What I'll do is I'll try to post it if I can. I don't have the file. I lost the file. Somebody stole one of my computers. It had. It was so tragic. I couldn't replace a lot of those files, but anyway, I had a hard copy of this thing. The what is light? Okay. Well, as we know from physics, it's both a particle and a wave. So that's pretty interesting, don't you think? A particle is like the matter, and the wave is like the energy. And it all fits in the whole, theory of relativity and all that. If you asked Einstein what light was, he might give you a really, interesting answer. I haven't studied that because I don't know physics, and I haven't studied the part on electromagnetic radiation yet. I'm reading a book by Einstein, but I put it aside for some other stuff that I'm reading. But anyway, but light is essentially is absolutely essential for the survival of all biological life, and we couldn't live if there wasn't light. And light being separated from the darkness, and light being purpose of the heavenly bodies was to illuminate and to provide a way of measuring the times and the seasons. And when God created the light, he said it was good. And you'll find that phrase, he said it was good, was in almost every, if not all, of the days of creation. But we'll get to all the days of creation in a more in-depth way, but I thought I'd introduce this. Here's a passage from 1 John. If you noticed, I posted a little blurb, message from D.A. Carson about the connection between Genesis 1 and 1 John. Well, 1 John 1:5 goes this way in the New American Standard translation. And this is the message we have heard from him and announced to you, that God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. If we say that we have fellowship with him and yet walk in the darkness, we lie and do not practice the truth. But if we walk in the light as he himself is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus Christ his Son cleanses us from all sin. And that's one of my favorite passages. So anyway, the other point about the light is, like, when the tabernacle was constructed, well, in the holy place, they had the menorah, the candlestick, the golden candlestick that was lit up by the prepared oil. And the priests, one of their jobs was to make sure the candle was burning in the most holy place. Not the most holy, the holy place. And if you look at the tabernacle, the way it's constructed, it's necessary to have light in there. And it's a model or image of the teaching of God, the instruction, the way that God guides us and disciplines us. And it's through the illumination of his word. And if we didn't have light, we couldn't read it or see where we're going. Or the psalmist said in Psalm 119, thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. So if we're going to walk a path through this world and through this life, we need light. So anyway, I kind of rushed through all that, I know, and a lot of it was a little bit disorganized, but just read this verses 1 through 5 yourself, meditate on it, and then study your commentaries. And your commentaries will help you confirm or formulate your own view of creation. And there are a lot of good websites that I'll be posting the link to and so forth. And I'll post some of this whatever material I can in the study. And I'm so glad that you're part of this study. And even if there's only a few of us, it's worth it because you are worth it. Okay? And so thank you and have a good day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.